Greetings! Welcome to another episode of Porygondolier. Today's installment may contain trace elements of LEASTPOLTEISPHALLTER. But first, for anyone that clicked on the video without knowing what this project is, welcome! The video you are currently watching is about a spooky new Gen 1 ROM hack I'm working on that will be packed to the brim with all things ghost type. In this game, when a Pokemon faints, it goes right ahead and turns into a ghost. The game now contains Misdreavus, Corsola, and Corsola. The evolutions of these will be coming to the game later, as I've decided to add Pokemon sequentially in National Pokédex order. If we look at the Pokédex, we can see that they appear down at the bottom here, and they all have the correct cries from Gen 2. Cries are going to be a bit of a tricky topic as I proceed to add Pokemon from Gen 3 and beyond, and I'm still sort of figuring that one out. But anyway, I should probably explain why the non-ghost version of Corsola is here. As of now, Johtonian Corsola is the only non-ghost type Pokemon planned to be added to the game, and I've included it largely so that it can be defeated and turn into Galarian Corsola. Having other Pokemon randomly turn into Corsola just didn't sit right with me, so just like how Cubone and Marowak turn into a Lowland Marowak, this one will not be random. You can get a Corsola called Caroline from this NPC on Route 5, and if it's defeated, it has a chance to learn the move Water Pulse when it ghostifies. Corsola isn't currently in the wild, although I'm considering putting some in Misty's gym, or maybe even having some kind of Corsola revival quest at the Cinnabar lab. But I'm still just playing around with ideas at the moment. Its signature move will be Mirror Coat, and depending on the form, it also gets access to Life Dew or Strength Sap. Moving on to Misdreavus, the Screech Pokemon that can only learn Screech if it happened to be fathered by a slime. Misdreavus is in the random pool, and for its signature move, I'm currently thinking it'll be Pain Split. This is a callback to Gen 2, when Misdreavus was the only Pokemon that could learn it. Although nowadays there are quite a few other ghosts that also get Pain Split, so I'm going to say that this one is subject to change. Misdreavus also gets access to some of the rather complex moves I've been adding over the last few weeks. Let's start with Spite. I mentioned previously that I was going to get enemy Pokemon to use their PP, and that is now done, which opened the door for Spite and also Grudge. Spite is a Gen 2 move that reduces the PP of the last move the enemy used by 2 to 5 points. So to add this move, first of all I had to figure out what the last move the opponent used was, and conveniently Gen 1 already has a move that cares about that. Mirror Move, so I could quite easily borrow a bit of code from that. We then handle a few edge cases, like, for example, if the enemy uses Fire Blast via Metronome, then Spite will fail, since the enemy doesn't actually know Fire Blast. Unless they do. Anyway, from there we generate a random number between 2 and 5 and deduct it from the PP, being careful not to go below 0. Now that was the enemy battler PP, but we also need to deduct it from the party PP. Unless the enemy is transformed, in which case we leave it alone.
Sorry to interrupt. I'm just editing this video and I realised that this bit probably didn't make much sense unless you've seen this video. So I'll put a link down below in case you want to watch it later. Anyway, I'll go away now.
And most of this follows pretty much how it works in Gen 2, with just a few Gen 1 bits and bobs sprinkled in to make up for missing functions. Now, that move was pretty straightforward, but the next two combined took me about 5 days. I've lumped these two together because they are actually very similar moves. Destiny Bond is a Gen 2 move that makes the user attempt to take down the enemy with it, meaning that if the enemy knocks out your Pokemon immediately after you use Destiny Bond, both Pokemon faint, or ghostify, or vanish. A great number of things can happen in this game. In order for this effect to trigger, the finishing blow must be dealt directly by the enemy, so things like poison damage, recoil, and spikes, yes, this game has spikes, will not trigger it. So to get this move working, I needed to give the game a way to keep track of if the last damage applied to a Pokemon was direct or not. So I did that, and hopefully I've properly accounted for all the different cases. Although, going into the future as I add more moves like Infestation, Curse, and Future Sight, I'll need to keep revisiting this topic to make sure I don't break it. It feels pretty delicate, but it is working for now. So you use Destiny Bond, and your Pokemon gains a new status called Has Destiny Bond. And as per Gen 2, this lasts until the next time you use a move, skip a turn due to flinching, use an item, try to run away, hit yourself in confusion. Actually, this list goes on, and I needed to account for all of these cases as well, so you can probably see why this took so long to get right. Then when a Pokemon faints, if it has the Destiny Bond status and the last damage was direct, we set the enemy's HP to 0. I'm simplifying slightly, but that's more or less what's going on. Grudge is a Gen 3 move that is triggered in exactly the same way, but instead of causing the attacker to faint, it causes them to lose all of the PP on the move they just defeated you with. This meant that most of the code would be common between the two moves, with just the end result being a little different. So it made a lot of sense to work on these moves together. I have 2 more moves I'd like to talk about today, and the next one isn't super complicated, but I do think it'll be quite a lot of fun. Mystical Fire is a Gen 6 move that does damage and lowers the enemy's special attack by 1 stage. It usually does so reliably, but for reasons that you can pause to read about if you like, in this game there's a 1 in 256 chance for this effect to fail. And also, since special is combined in this game, it drops the enemy's special stat by 1 instead of special attack. This means that as you use it, not only will each subsequent Mystical Fire hit harder, the enemy's special moves will grow weaker, so in certain fights this move has the potential to be rather good indeed. You can teach your Pokemon Mystical Fire by speaking to this suspicious man, who claims to be a wizard, on Route 6. Before he'll teach it to you though, you have to defeat him in battle. To get this working, I actually built a brand new tutor system that is completely separate from TMs. Which might sound a little bit odd, but if you were to look at how Pokemon Crystal works, and I'm no expert on Gen 2, or Gen 1 for that matter, but I understand that the 3 tutor moves in the game work more or less like TMs, meaning you would find the tutor moves a Pokemon can learn in the base stats data with the TMs. But for reasons to do with future-proofing save data, I wanted to make tutor moves completely separate. I won't get into how it works because it's been about a month since I made it now and I've almost completely forgotten. But in theory, I can add more tutor moves in the future without sacrificing save data backwards compatibility, which I hope you'll agree is rather nice. The last move I'd like to talk about is Perish Song. This is another Gen 2 move that causes all Pokemon that hear it to faint after 3 turns. It wasn't a terribly complicated move to add, especially after Destiny Bond, but I've been really enjoying seeing it run in Gen 1. Thanks to the Pokemon Crystal audio engine this game uses, I was able to easily add the proper sound for Perish Song from Gen 2. And I didn't peek at Gen 2 for the mechanics on this one, but I'm pretty sure it works more or less the same. I'm also considering tweaking the Gen 1 AI slightly so that trainers might switch out their Pokemon if they're about to faint due to Perish Song, and I welcome any thoughts or feelings you have on this in the comments section. In case you're wondering, here is a full list of moves added so far, and a sneak peek of what I'll be working on next. Generation 1 Pokemon has a character limit of 10 on the names of Pokemon, and this presents something of a problem when trying to add modern creatures with rather long names. Of the Pokemon currently planned for the game, there are 6 with names that are just too long to fit. To remedy this, I planned to adjust the spelling of their names to make it work. It's not a very satisfying solution, but it seemed to be the only way. After all, while it is possible to increase the character limit to 12, it wouldn't really fit on various screens. But then, during a discussion on this topic on the Porygondolier's Discord, one of our members mentioned something called Illusion Yellow. In Super Mario World on the SNES, there are 2 levels that have names that are too wide to fit in the UI. These are called Forest of Illusion 1 and Yellow Switch Palace. The solution was to have some special narrow text that squashes up the illusi and yellow parts of the names, allowing them to be displayed in full. As it happens, in the English edition of Pokemon Red, there is a good amount of blank space left in the font tiles, due to the removal of Japanese characters. And so, members of the Discord banded together and created this. With these additional characters, it is now possible to display all of the Pokemon's names in full. The character limit of 10 actually continued to be a thing through to the end of Gen 5, and the first ghost type with a longer name is the Gen 7 Ultra Beast, Blacephalon. So it'll be a while before I actually get to use these new characters, but I felt compelled to tell you about this today, and so that is what I have done. And that's pretty much all I have for you today. Today's video is just a little bit more technical than usual, and I'd really love to hear from you in the comments how you felt about that. Would you like more or less detail next time? Would you like me to do code explanations in a bad Scottish accent? And by the way, the next Pokemon for me to add just so happens to be Shedinja, a Pokemon that I already added to Gen 1 in the past, complete with all of its mechanics. That was for a solo run that literally tore me in half. And oh my, is that a link to go and watch it? Wow, you could probably click on that or touch it or something. Maybe you're watching in the future and you can just access it with your mind. The point is, have a wonderful day, and I look forward to welcoming you back to another video soon. For now, bye!